Hey everybody, we're back with episode 4 of the Puff Puff Planted podcast. We got a really cool episode that I'm really excited about today. We have some guests on the show with us, and we're going to be talking about RSO. Our guests are from Cannalicious and Detroit Edibles. I'm sure at this point some of you have heard about their brand. They're everywhere. They make a lot of cool products. Today we're gonna talk a little bit specifically about their RSO based products. One of the things that they're known to specialize about. So, you know, I've had a lot of questions from various consumers and folks just in passing and that have came into various dispensaries that I've, been in. And a big question is like, what is RSO and how can it help me? It's a topic. It's very medically focused and it has a lot of great benefits to it. But also it has a lot of mystification to it. A lot of people don't know, exactly what it is, how it helps. They've just heard about it or they've read an article. So that's what we want to bring you today. Some really good information on how it can help you and educate everybody on exactly what RSO is. So I've always thought that Detroit Edibles and Cannalicious was a cool company too, because they have their own processing. So they process everything in-house. They kind of control their quality and their supply chain. So, and by the way, they don't even just make just the products that we have today that we're going to talk about specifically, but they got a lot of other concentrates and stuff that we'll kind of mention. So really knowledgeable guys here. You're going to learn a lot from them. One of them being the chief operating officer of the company and the other, Andrew, being the business development manager. So I don't want to steal their thunder, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Guys, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, why you got in the cannabis space, and a funny story, anything you got that makes you get up every day and do this and work in this crazy industry.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for having us in Victoria. It's a pleasure, and working with Planted over the last call it year and a half since you guys were first licensed out in Whitmore Lake. It fills a void within the cannabis industry, which we really appreciate, and the knowledge that you guys bring to your customers is always really important. We're always trying to figure out how do we educate more and more people. And there's so many canna-curious or canna-confused out there.
I like that.
And that's our go-to, because we think long-term cannabis is going to be around and has been around for hundreds of years. It's going to be around for a lot longer. And so many people think of the cannabinoid as just a vehicle to get it in their system. Well, we look at it a little differently. We want to educate the medical purposes, which, like you mentioned, RSO or Rick Simpson oil. But then we also want to switch around and look at, we want people to enjoy having a cannabis.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah. Explain that a little bit more. I liked how you said that earlier today too.
Exactly. So the gummy is literally a vehicle just to get the THC into your system. Mm-hmm. And if that was the only thing alcohol provided, we'd all be drinking Everclear. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember the last time I had Everclear and Kool-Aid, but it was quite the experience. If we look at it as an experience, and whether my wife and I are going over to another couple's house, we're going to bring them a nice bottle of wine. The bottle of wine is not meant to get them drunk. It's to enjoy and savor and relax and enjoy the evening. And that's where we try to hit on the edible side what we do with our products, whether it's, we call it the mellow line, the marshmallow line of cinnamon toast, fruity pebbles, and Oreo O's.
You're making me hungry, Tim.
It's so hungry and it's so delicious, but you can literally enjoy your experience versus just take the vehicle. So we enjoy trying to find things that people enjoy to take to the next level of what they can do and use with cannabis. Okay,
how did you get into what did you do before this, or what's your background?
Always a great question for one of the older persons in the industries. So I spent many years, my formative years, with Anheuser-Busch. Mm-hmm. So sales, marketing, distribution of a legalized federal product, from brewing to distributors to retail. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to the food chain of cannabis right now. And I started out working, and I became the second licensed transporter in the state of Michigan.
Interesting. Okay.
And so we got licensed, but prior to licensing, that was when there was that 5-person board, and you had to get 3 votes to get licensed. And so I went to every meeting, met every other grower that was trying to get licensed, processors, and then obviously many retailers. And I met my current partners now, and they had started Cannalicious back in August of 2017. So we're coming up on 5 years of being incorporated, 4 years of being licensed.
It's like 70 years in a normal business.
It really is.
It's awesome. like the age of your cat or dog. It's like times like 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've learned a lot.
Yeah.
So met them and knew all of the retailers, but I kind of saw transport as it is a vehicle to get the product from A to B, but it's not going to be as explosive of growth And I went and sat with them. They're both from Traverse City. And I said, hey, you got a great company, a great name, great people. You don't seem to have a leader and a vision yet.
Structure.
Yeah. And having worked for one of the largest brewers in the world, I learned a little bit about structure.
Yeah.
And so we put together a plan 3 years ago to have me join the company as its president. And it's been explosive since then. We acquired Detroit Fudge Company at the time. We then later changed it to Detroit Edibles because our philosophy was to bring out an edible line. And it's really hard to bring out an edible line under Detroit Fudge. Yeah. So we changed it to Detroit. Yeah. It's not fudge, exactly. So we changed to Detroit Edibles and have had quite a bit of success. Got into the gummy production because people want it, but we more looked at how is it going to be the better vehicle. And that's why you see fast-acting bolts that we have.
Innovation, new types of consumption.
Correct. Okay. And fast-acting RSO. And awesome. We'll get into RSO and let Andrew talk more about that. But that was kind of my history and story coming into the company. We've been blessed to have a head of processing, Devin DeFord, who I call the Walter White of weed in Michigan. He's lived in a lab for the last 8 to 10 years. Yeah. And some in the black market, a little bit in the gray market, but truly with us.
We had an episode on how that's important to blend those too.
It truly is. And so he knows the history. And I tell people all the time, in your background knowing equipment, it's not a Keurig machine.
Yes.
You cannot just put a cup, hit a button, and it squeezes out. Nope. So we've perfected that through him. So he's kind of progressed us through just not an ETS machine, but now we have an ethanol washer, an HVE machine, short path. We're trying to get into a lot of different things that he continues to want to tinker and toy with how we improve the processes. And when you have an engineer in your facility, it really helps eliminate a lot of mistakes.
Especially when you're processing in-house too.
You're always looking for continuous improvement too.
Always. And we're not lean certified, but I'll guarantee you we're very close to being so. But in this industry, nobody seems to know what that is or care, but we're continuing to run our business that way.
So important. Yep.
And you know what too? So thank you for that background. Andrew, where'd you get started? How did you, and by the way, actually, I don't want to interrupt you, but I got to tell a cool story about Andrew. I was going to say, how did you get lucky with such a great employee? And I'll tell you why. You guys didn't even know I was going to talk about this, but it's something I'll always remember about Andrew. He left a vendor day one time at one of the dispensaries, and I had this guy, and he was like, "Where's the Cannalicious guy?" He's like, he promised me a T-shirt. And I'm like, oh no. I'm like, where's Andrew? And you had just left. Andrew was like 15 minutes down the road, and I called him. I'm like, dude, I got this guy. He needs this T-shirt. He wants this Cannalicious shirt so bad because I got cool shirts. And I was like, could you just like maybe drop it by one of these weeks? He's like, no, I'm going to turn around. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And I was like, no, you don't have to. He's like, no, I'm going to turn around. I'm going to get this guy his T-shirt. Drove back 15 minutes, got this guy this T-shirt. And he was extremely happy. So I never thanked you for that, but that was super cool. Oh, so with that said, how'd you get into the industry? How'd you start with Cannalicious? Tell us about yourself.
Well, not that there's a traditional path to getting into this industry, but I kind of came in on somewhat of a non-traditional path. I out of school, went to Michigan State University, and out of school got into the nonprofit field. Really enjoyed doing that. Serving others was a big aspect of why I got into that industry. And just realized that, it was time for a career change. So I decided I was really passionate about antiques and collectibles. So I decided to create my own business and do that for a while. And then, as we all know, we experienced the pandemic, and my business took a pretty big hit. So I started to look around for other opportunities out there. A friend of mine that worked under Tim at the time was posting on social media about a cannabis-related job that he worked, and I was immediately interested. I was a user of cannabis in college. As soon as it became medicinally available, I used it for back pain, lower back pain. And it really helped me a lot. And another part about cannabis that always interested me was knowing the therapeutic benefits of cannabis for cancer patients and those with various different ailments. When I was very young, my mother passed away from cancer. So seeing what cannabis could do, it made me that personalized the experience for me, saying, what could have cannabis done for her? And so thinking about all those things, it kind of drove me to say, well, I want to explore working in the cannabis industry. And so from there, I contacted Tim, and that was right when the operation was really getting up off the ground. Wasn't really sure what we were going to do. And
what year is that?
This was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So end of 2019,
awesome.
basically. Or end of 2020. Sorry about that. But yeah, no, and then I got into the cannabis industry, and it was like a flood of knowledge that I had to learn and take in, because I knew about, obviously rolling up a doobie and smoking it, but I didn't really know the nuances of cannabis and all the different things that exist within the cannabis plant and all the different ways we can extract all these different cannabinoids. So that became extremely interesting. They got me in the lab, trained me, and set me out into the world of cannabis. And ever since then, I've just been engrossed in it, loving it, and enjoying every day that I'm helping people out.
So you jumped right in on the manufacturing side too, learned how it was made, what they were doing, everything.
Absolutely.
Cool. That understanding how it's made, I have to imagine that helps you articulate to somebody what those benefits are too, correct?
100%.
One of the things we have all of our brand reps do when they join us, they go spend a week in our lab.
That's awesome.
And they learn how to pack a sock. They learn how to extract. They learn how to package.
I love that.
They learn how to create a manifest so that they know what the distribution people have to go through to make an order go out the door.
Yeah.
It familiarizes them more with the products, and they know the quality that happens. And they also can't, and sales reps will do anything to make a sale. They will say anything and say, oh yeah, we can do that. But having done that process, it'll slow them down just a touch to say, oh, wait, now if I change this process, and having put Andrew through that and our other 5 brand reps that cover the state, it's important for them to know that and to appreciate those people that are behind the scenes all the time.
It takes both.
It does.
Yeah, it takes both.
It is.
What do you, so I know you mentioned there were some other partners on your end. How did you guys, like when you came in, what's the history of the company? Why did they start it? What was the thought behind it? Was there something that like motivated it?
So first and foremost, everybody wants to find the next new thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And both Dave and Dan, my 2 partners, wanted to put their foot in the water. And I was telling the story, Dan and Dave met with Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I don't know where this is going, but it's going to be a big industry. Yeah. And those who stand on the sidelines won't benefit as much as the people in the pool. Yeah. And you have to dive in head first. Yeah. And once you have not only human capital, but physical, real currency in it, you're going to learn and participate at a much higher level. So that's how they got in. We chose Pinconning Township because they were one of the very first townships that said, come up here. And we'll
go
do it
Pinconning. All right.
So
shout out to Pinconning for that one.
Yeah, the Pinconning Paralyzer is very well known within the industry. So we
offline. I have to tell you a story about the Pinconning Paralyzer one time, but that's an off podcast one.
But we converted a combine barn into a lab and storage facility. It was 5,000 square feet, and then we also acquired Detroit Edible Company, which was in Ann Arbor. We chose about 8 months ago, almost about this time last year, to build an addition onto our current facility up in Pinconning so that we could all be under one roof. So we no longer had to extract and make distillate and ship it down to Ann Arbor to make our edibles. We now have a kitchen at this west end or east end of the building where Aubrey and she makes all those delicious treats all under one roof. And then we're packaging, labeling, distributing all from one location. Okay. So our customers can order RSO, honey, peanut butter, chocolate.
Same facility.
And shatter, all from one, and it gets shipped to them right away.
All about leaning out, like you said.
That's right.
Tell me if I'm wrong. I feel like I'm picking up on something. So for the history of the company, then, it seems like Cannalicious, before the acquisition of Detroit Edibles, Cannalicious was focused on, I guess we'll call it the API, the active ingredient, right? You were focused on getting the extraction right, making that constituent. It sounds like the Detroit Edibles, they had some really good flavor formulations, like, because I know everything you have tastes good, which I think we're going to talk about in some of this, but that is one of the things that I wanted to touch on when we talk later about some of these products. Is I've had the Cannabis Crispies. They taste awesome. And there's a lot of companies that make good tasting stuff, but it feels like, was that part of that acquisition? Did they come with some of that knowledge?
100%. Yeah. So Aubrey had worked in the caregiver market for a number of years. So she was already their head chef. So not only did we buy the name, we bought the recipes.
Yeah.
And
the people and the knowledge.
Knowledge. Cool. All of those things are important. And then we looked at it as, okay, how do we lean this out? And last July, we did as much in 1 month as the previous company did the year before.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
So
It's like finding processes that, okay, you look at, we're making peanut butter on the top of a stove. Now we get peanut butter from Naturally Nutty out of Traverse City in 33-gallon drums.
That's cool.
Stainless steel.
Well, it's helping another business too.
Helping
Keeping
another
local.
Michigan
That I
business.
like.
Local business,
Yeah.
for sure.
And so it comes in, and we found a mixer. It looks like a giant auger, and we put the auger right into the 33-gallon barrel, and then we purchased a pneumatic eye fill, which fills up all of our cups to the exact same amount every time versus taking a spoon and spooning out peanut butter or honey and dripping it in and making sure you have the exact
Consistency is very important nowadays.
extremely
right?
important. And homogenization and being able to make sure that, every one of those cups have 100 milligrams or, within that percentage.
That piece you just mentioned too, we have this a lot. I know we've ran into this at the stores before. People are afraid sometimes to consume certain things because of the inconsistency. I think one of the things that we'll talk about today when we talk about how it's made, what makes them different, is being able to provide a product that is tested and consistent, that you know exactly what you're reading on that label is what you're taking. Yes. Because if you ever hear the stories about people like, oh, I'm never going to touch that again, it wasn't because they necessarily had a negative effect. It was because they took too much or they thought it was one thing and it was another, right? I mean, how many times do we hear that?
A ton of times.
It's like the number one reason.
Yeah, I think a big portion of that is just a kind of lack of guidance. Usually I feel like everyone's first edible is a friend who's been eating them and it's like, hey, just eat this whole thing, right? And you eat it and it's just not the experience you were expecting. So
this is between 50 and 3,000 milligrams.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, and so much of it was like black market edibles that people had their first edible as a friend made it in their kitchen.
Yeah.
And their friend truly doesn't know what's going into it. So yeah.
And you get those homemade edibles too, and you never really know. You could have one piece of something that has hardly any THC in it, or another piece has all the THC in it. So that's a big part of what we do as a company too, is not only the compliance testing that we have to do through the state, but homogeneity testing to make sure that everything's even, so the dosing's proper for the end user.
That's interesting. So you're explain that a little bit more on that last part. So you're making sure that what's on that label, people are taking that exact amount. How do you guys, what's your methodology behind that? Is what makes you different in that aspect?
Just basically making sure that each piece that is adequately dosed, so that when a consumer takes, a piece of a Barracuda bar off, they know that that's going to be 5 to 10 milligrams, depending on the size of the bar and the THC that's in there.
What is what's the variance that you're allowed to? I know there's 10%. A small variance in the state. Is it 10%? 10%, right?
Variance. Yep.
Cool. So basically that's that tolerance. You can tell them within plus or minus 10%. And and correct me if I'm wrong too, that's not a matter of necessarily how it's produced too. That's a matter of the testing. The machines know exactly what's there, but there is going to be a slight tolerance.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So I think now would probably be a good time. We got all these awesome products laid out. Why don't we talk about them? Why don't we? Because we want to dive in and tell you exactly. We're gonna talk about how RSO's made, what makes RSO. Before the episode, I was talking to them about the history of RSO, and I'm gonna let them talk about that because they have some cool facts. Some of them may be mystified, unknown, but we got some cool facts about that too. But let's run through the products really quick. Why don't you guys tell everybody about what you have? And I know this again. I know this is focused on RSO, but we're gonna touch on some of the cannabis crispies and some of the Flowerade. They also have some concentrates and some other things, but just run us through the product line. Give us a little bit of everything. We'll talk about the consumption methods after, but tell us about these.
Sure. So I'll start on this end. We'll come back to the RSO side because I think that's where we're going to go and want to explain more about what Rick Simpson provided to all of us. But we talked a little earlier about gummies just being a vehicle to get the THC in. We branched out and wanted to do crispy treats, which is made with marshmallow. Much like the Rice Krispies treats that we all knew as, 8-year-olds. Mom would make a pot of Rice Krispies with marshmallows and some butter and whip it up. Well, we've taken that to the next level and we've gone and used different cereals. The Cinnamon Toast Cannabis Crispy is actually made with cinnamon toast. Yeah. It's ground up, and it's pneumatically perfect. A square every time. So Fruity Pebbles.
I know, I love them.
We don't use the generic. We use actually Fruity Pebbles, which brings the flavor and the colors out much more.
That's the only one I haven't had yet.
And then we just rolled out Cookies and Cream, which is made with Oreo O's. And again, it's
Can't
if
go
you
wrong.
like chocolate and marshmallows,
Yeah.
it's the treat to go to.
Yeah.
This goes back to your enjoy.
Enjoy.
You want
I-
people to
I can't-
enjoy.
Exactly.
I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine anything more nostalgic than like a crispy,
is correct.
you know, like outside of a brownie, you know, like in
Yeah.
terms of like, you know,
Everybody
homemade
knows
edibles, but also just growing up eating those kind of things. And like my favorite high snack, I eat dry cinnamon toast cereal.
love
So
dry cinnamon toast
that
crunch.
just goes right up my alley. Yeah.
And then we also just launched Flowerade about 2 months ago. And we know that the drink category, the drink enhancer category is one that's going to continue to grow over time. There's a lot of companies that are bringing out, you know, shelf-stable, actually pre-mixed drinks. My background being beverage, doing that is extremely hard. Canning lines are hard, bottle or purification of water, all of these other things. We believe that giving the option to the consumer, whether it's 3 different flavors, to dose how they need to.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now, the drink enhancer category is for the heavy consumer. They want 100 milligrams.
Yeah.
We believe that it will continue to grow to the 5 and the
Yeah.
10. What I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, that
Yep.
canna-curious, canna-confused. I don't want to get stoned. I want to relax.
Yeah, if you go out to like those more developed markets out in like Colorado and stuff, I mean, you're seeing like the colas that are 5 milligrams or 2.5 milligrams, and I've had requests for those in the store because you see these drinks that are 100 milligrams in the whole thing, and people
Right.
say to me, I have to put it in the cap and take a shot, and it's just I'm trying to enjoy a beverage. I'm not trying to take a shot of weed, so
correct.
I think going this way with like the powders and allowing them to dose themselves, it's also very shelf stable and super convenient. Like throw that in my golf bag, throw that in my purse, like take that with me anywhere I go. And so I think that's the other thing I've seen is a lot of the actual beverages have like pretty short expiration dates on them.
Sure.
The shelf stability is just not there,
It's
and they don't know.
very, very
That's got to be way longer than.
Yeah,
Much longer.
it's like a Gatorade
Yeah,
powder or
yeah.
something, some type of powder. It's pretty cool. I just think you can mix it in with just almost anything.
And it comes with a little dosing spoon. So,
So cute.
if you want to just take 10 milligrams and you put it into an entire water bottle
Yeah.
and just shake it up, and
Yeah.
you've got 10 milligrams of a drink.
I tell people all the time, I'm like, throw them in like your slushies or your smoothies.
Yeah,
like, and
yeah.
just like, mix it up. Try
Well,
it
and
out.
we're missing the most, probably for a lot of people, one of the biggest benefits, if you think about it, it's much different than walking around smoking a joint, right? I mean,
so much
hey,
more discreet.
Oh, you're just walking down, drinking a water. It's discreet, and that's important to a lot of people because they need cannabis to help them. But there's still, in some cases, a stigma around it. So, yeah, interesting consumption
People
method.
have
Yeah.
become like super creative with the things like the powders. Like I've had someone tell me that they make their own like edibles using like drink powders and stuff, as a flavoring and everything. Yeah, it's pretty cool what the canna-curious world will
Yeah.
come up with. Yeah.
We don't suggest it or market it that
Yeah,
way, but
exactly.
you literally could take this like the dry stick,
Yeah,
and just
Yeah.
lick it if
Yeah.
you wanted to.
Yeah,
It's
I've
something
heard
that's
people do that too.
consumable that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Does it does it mix up pretty good in water too?
It does. Oddly enough, the type of process that it goes through, the colder the water, the harder it is for it to mix.
Interesting.
So we actually suggest lukewarm water and then pour it over ice.
over ice.
Okay.
It just shakes up better.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're dumping the entire thing into a
Yeah.
bottle, you're going to have some.
That's a tolerance.
It's
Yeah.
a tolerance.
I think that's like anything. When I do my crystal light
Yeah.
packets at
Oh,
home,
yeah.
I start with hot water at the bottom of my
love
jug,
Crystal
and then I
Light.
pour the cold water on top.
Well, or if anybody's worked out, like using protein powder or whey powder, those type of things are very powdery. Like
Yeah.
and it
And it
poofs
poofs,
up.
yeah.
Same difference. The chalkiness is there, but for people that have never consumed it, it's like, oh wow, that's a little chalky. No, it's not. It's just that's powder.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and the consumers too, like you said, a lot of times they get in their car and they just skip the water part and they want to throw it in their mouth. And
Yeah.
I've had it when the first kind of ever drink enhancers came out that were like liquid. And I remember I did the same thing. I got a sample at work and I got in my car and I squirted it in my mouth and I spit it out because I was like, that is so bad.
So
And I
potent.
remember talking to the rep and them going, that's not the intention. You're not supposed to just pour it in your mouth, like you're supposed to mix it with something. But I mean, I think the development now in like drink enhancers, like that probably tastes just fine throwing it in your mouth as it is, even though it's not, the way that you recommend.
And that canna-curious, canna-confused, they want it fast acting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they don't want to wait for an hour and a half, because who has an hour and a half to wait to
Yeah.
get the achieved effect?
Achieved
Yeah.
effect.
Like
Yeah.
if I took an Advil, I want it to help in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't want it
Yeah.
to help me in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And that's what's been so fun about fast acting edibles is I feel like they're hitting a way like larger market, a way wider market of people. And, I tell people they're like a lot lighter of a high. It's more of a smoker's high. It's not nearly as heavy or sedating to me.
It goes away faster.
It goes,
Yeah.
your onset time is shorter and it peaks and then it kind of, the duration is way shorter for those fast acting edibles.
It's always cut my onset in half. It's like the weirdest thing. My exact tolerance for non-nano gummies is, let's say, every single time I've had the fast acting, it's cut it in half. For me, it's an exact difference. So, and I did notice, it just goes away a little bit quicker. But the funny thing about recently with the fast acting too, I found with a lot of customers is people, oh, which one's better? It's different. There's not better. There's different. Yeah. There's times where I want that straight up edible, long lasting. I want it to kind of just roll in, right? And I want the fast acting. It comes in quick, goes away a little bit. And it's just, and also it's a slightly different high too.
Yeah, it is.
So, and you guys carry both. So,
I mean,
well, how many people come into Planted and say, I need help to sleep?
Yeah, exactly.
They want to stay asleep.
Yeah, they don't want to wait an hour and a half to go to sleep. They're trying to go to sleep immediately. And I tell a lot of people too, because there's a whole lot of, the way that edibles like interact with your body and how your liver breaks them down with certain enzymes. And I tell a lot of people there's a lot of people who eat traditional edibles and feel absolutely no effect from it, like because their liver either processes it way too fast or they just don't have the enzymes to process it that way. And so I've had a lot of luck steering those people in direction of fast acting edibles, and they actually will get an effect. Not usually as large as most people, but they're like, I felt it. Like I was actually high from that. And I ate 100 milligrams the other day of a traditional edible and I felt nothing. So it's been pretty cool to be able to like aid people in that, because edibles are, again, in any market, like it's more discreet, but it's also people feel it's healthier for you because you're not inhaling or you're not putting anything.
That's
in your
a big
lungs
one
by
too for a lot of people.
So like it's awesome to be able to have like an alternative for someone. And when they're like, hey, traditional edibles don't work for me, I'm like, let's try these fast acting gummies. Yeah.
And actually with that, speaking of that too, and we're I don't want to skip ahead, but one of the things when we talk about consumption methods too, I actually want to make sure we cover in, the reason I think that it's really cool that you guys have fast acting RSO gummies is because obviously we're going to talk about the different forms in a little bit, but some super concentrated RSO in like a dart format, you have to dose it properly, right? So as you're building up that tolerance, you got to be careful with it. And the nice thing about an edible is you guys have them, like we talked about earlier, they're consistent, right? They have a very small tolerance, plus or minus. So with the edibles, I feel like it allows you to get into RSO, kind of take it, understand your tolerance. And then when you start needing more than just what a gummy can provide, or if you have to take so many gummies to get there, like myself currently right now, I built up a tolerance in edibles. I don't want to have multiple gummies. I've myself, even not for the medical benefit, transitioned to RSO just so I can get that same benefit with a higher concentration, but not have to eat as much to get there. That's a good thing.
Well, and then moving on to the RSO, we started our company with RSO as one of our flagship type of concentrates.
Yeah.
We're happy and proud to say we're kind of the leader of the state of RSO. We sell more than 75% of the state's RSO. Cannalicious has a great brand name with it. But one of the things we did learn with many of our customers, they would walk into the store and say, hey, I'm told that I should try RSO. And this is their first experience with cannabis. So the great bud tender suggests RSO, and they said, okay, we're going to give you a syringe. What? A syringe? No, it doesn't have a needle.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're going to put a little bit of a rice-sized dabble on a cracker. You're going to eat it, and that will help you. Well, how often should I do this? I don't know, once, maybe twice a day. Like there's a lot of confusion about RSO. And oh, by the way, it really doesn't taste that great. And so then, like, how do you mitigate that? So we transitioned from just raw RSO to starting to flavor RSO.
I like that.
So we put cherry terpenes into our RSO and grape and lime, right? So people could mitigate some of that bad taste. So then we kept saying, okay, but the person walking in, how do we help them dose it? And we have lines on our syringes that don't have needles. But it's really difficult to portion out how much they should have. So the bud tenders all know about RSO, and we keep saying RSO. We'll get into Rick Simpson, but what he did for us in terms of developing what this is, but we wanted to then to extend it. So we brought it out with recovery and rest. So we mixed CBN,
which we got here,
with RSO, and then we mixed a whole list of cannabinoids, CBG, CBA, for recovery. And recovery is not designed to have you get high. It's more to recover. So whether you're coming out of a surgery or you just did a workout. Well, now you went and worked out in a gym and you pull out a syringe that doesn't have a needle and somebody looks at you and goes, what are you doing? Oh no, I take this. It helps me, recover faster. Again, it's not a good look. How are you going to then share that same syringe with that other individual. So that's where we then transitioned over to how do we make this fast acting and into a gummy form.
Yeah.
We have a great innovation team. They're constantly tinkering. I keep telling all of our employees, we have no idea where that next idea is going to come from. So bring it to us.
I love that.
If we can figure out what and how to replicate it and then reproduce it often, let's do it.
Yeah.
So we have Recovery, Rest, and Original, which is the cherry. And the gummies have gone over so very well.
They taste good.
Across the state.
So you're taking a base RSO and you're kind of adding maybe some cannabinoids into it to achieve a slightly different effect of the traditional RSO feel.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, to my knowledge, you're the only person in the Michigan market that's doing a fast-acting RSO gummy.
we're the only ones in the world that we know of that have taken RSO and put it into a gummy. And we're happy about our team and what they've been able to figure out and achieve.
It's a good accomplishment.
Because I've seen fast-acting gummies. And, it's just, there's some claims that maybe another brand would use RSO, but to my knowledge, they don't market it as RSO. So for me, like, this is the first RSO fast-acting gummy. And like you said, most people coming into the RSO world are new to it, or it's a family member who they're trying to treat with RSO. Like, same thing, my grandmother had cancer, and I was like, there's no way I can get this woman to use RSO in a syringe like this, because it's also just daunting looking, and it looks, she saw that and was like, no, I'm good. And it was one of those things where it's like, hey, try these gummies, but it's so much less intimidating to try a gummy and to dose a gummy and to give someone, here's a half of one and try that and start, because I've accidentally overdosed my own father on RSO. That's a funny story I can tell, but he had a fusion surgery on his spine, and he was in like incredible pain, and he had been taking some like 1-to-1 gummies for a while, and he called me one day and said, I'm fine with my 1-to-1 normally, but this is just not cutting it for me. And he didn't want to take his narcotics and whatever was prescribed to him. He said, is there something stronger than this? And my brain was like, he's been taking gummies for a really long time. He can probably handle some RSO in like a really low dose. And so, I was in the black market at the time, but I had a friend of mine who was producing like RSO and RSO capsules. And so he had capsules that were 5 milligram capsules, but then he also sold 50 milligram capsules that were for like high dose for cancer patients and stuff like that. And so I went to him and I picked some up from him, and I'm pretty sure I told him I wanted those 5 milligram capsules, right? But I went home and I went to my dad's house, and I show up, and the capsules, it was, biodegradable. It was like a capsule degrade down, but you could open it and see the RSO on the inside. And so I said to my dad, open it and just put half of that capsule in your mouth. And he was like, okay. So, come time, he's struggling to get it half open, so he just throws the whole thing in his mouth. So it's probably like 6 hours later, my mom calls me. It's 3 a.m. She called me 4 times. And I go, oh, God. So I answer the phone. She goes, what did you give your father? I said, what do you mean? She goes, what did you give your father? And I said, I gave him some RSO, really low dose. He took half. She goes, he took the whole thing. I said, even if he took the whole thing, Mom, he should be fine. He should be maybe in outer space, but he'll be okay. She goes, he's in the backyard with a flashlight, looking in the trees, saying that there's like weird animals in the trees and that he's like in a different universe, right? She's like, come back to Earth. And he's like, I'm not on Earth. Like, he's just roaming the backyard. So she's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get this man back inside. And I said, okay, well, do me one favor. Go over to the bottle I gave you and read me the label. So she reads it and she goes, 50 milligrams of RSO per capsule. And I go, oh, Mom, tell Dad to buckle up.
Have fun.
I was like, buckle up, and it's going to be a ride. I'm really sorry. So the next day I get a call from my dad. He didn't fall asleep till like 7 a.m. because he was just so high. But he calls me the next day. He goes, well, yeah, didn't feel my back at all, but,
That's a plus.
He goes, I slept for 12 hours, and he goes, I'll never do that again. And I said, no, dude, RSO can be so helpful for you if done the right way. So even that, those scenarios, while funny, is also could be pretty scary for a lot of people. So that's why, I encourage my bud tenders to be super cautious when we're talking about RSO and who we're recommending it to, and making sure that RSO is the right path for them. But then if it is, how do we dose them properly? How do we get them to that space? Because something I tell a lot of people, because I call it the crude oil of THC. It's just so thick, it's so tarry. People are off put by it. They have to a lot of times drop the syringe in a cup of warm water to kind of loosen it up. And there's been some stories of people trying to push RSO too much and it shatters the syringe or something like that. So I tell people all the time, I'm like, run it under warm water. My way that I did it with my grandmother was I just took a cookie sheet, like parchment paper, and I did rice grain amounts and all of it, put it in the freezer, and just pop them off. Little frozen pieces of RSO, so much easier to just take in, and it doesn't get stuck on your teeth or anything like that. Stick it to the top roof of your mouth or swallow it, whatever. Whatever you want to do. But that's something that I encourage my bud tenders all the time. And your line is definitely the go-to. I mean, we sell so much recovery RSO. When I brought it on, I'm like, this is a really cool concept, but like, is the consumer base educated enough to bite on this? And they were. I mean, and it's not even that. It's my bud tenders needed to be educated on it too. Yep. And there's so many people that come back habitually for just that. You know, they'll come in like, I don't want any other RSO. Give me the recovery or give me the rest. That's what I'm looking for. And it's so cool because, like you said, there's other companies that do RSO, but they're not taking it and running with it and saying, how else can we help people? How much
different application.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, you know, you brought up a really good point too, because, you know, a lot of those crazy stories that you hear too, right, from the past when they were first coming about with RSO, I actually think as part of our next topic, I was going to ask you, hey, what sets Cannalicious apart? And I want to set you up for it because I feel like this is what sets you apart. The regulation that we face in the States and the testing and actually where we've gotten to today with testing capabilities. Back in the day, we did not know. Even that 50 milligram example, we kind of knew, but was that 50? Was that 75? Was that 100? We're stuck to a 10, not stuck. We're regulated to a plus or minus 10% variance. So I bring this point up because if you've had a horror story in the past or you've had a negative effect or somebody else has, come into a reputable dispensary, talk to a knowledgeable bud tender, listen to this show, listen to how this stuff's made, maybe try the Cannalicious products and give it a shot because I promise it's much different nowadays. We'll probably have a whole episode talking about how we test and regulation and stuff, but it is much different. So if you had a bad experience, try it.
And talking about education, education is so key. And Andrew, why don't you talk more about Rick Simpson and what he developed?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Kevin, just what you were speaking about is so important too, because Rick Simpson oil, and I'll touch on it here getting into what Rick Simpson oil is and the history behind it, but it is something you can make at home. However, you can make it at home, but you don't know what's going to be in there. You know, the products that we have on the regulated market are tested in state-approved labs. So you know that what you're going to get has the right potency, has the right constituents in it that is going to give you that therapeutic benefit. So that's really important, especially considering that the process to make this is pretty dangerous.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit too when you're done out, without giving away the secret sauce, right? Give them a little bit of a general 30,000 foot level overview on how you guys accomplished the RSO.
Well, absolutely. I'm going to start. I'm actually going to go way back about 100 years.
Please do.
That's where the story of really cannabis oil starts, because back before the prohibition of cannabis, you know, cannabis tinctures and oils were prevalent as a medicinal product. Once prohibition happened, obviously got scheduled by the federal government, and so that basically eliminated testing, that eliminated experimentation, that eliminated the societal use of the drug.
What a shame.
Yeah. Well, and so we fast forward basically to the late 90s, early 2000s. Rick Simpson was a Canadian engineer that was working on, I believe, in a hospital. This is the story, obviously. And he was inhaling a lot of asbestos from the hospital he was working in. Fell off a ladder, ended up with tinnitus of the ear and some other issues that, you know, he didn't really want to use pharmaceutical drugs for. He had used cannabis before and thought this would be a great means to ease, you know, his issues. So he started using cannabis and then started to realize that he could synthesize cannabis into an oil through a process of using a solvent to extract, basically saturating the cannabis and then extracting all of the therapeutic cannabinoids and the different plant matter from the cannabis and then putting it into an oil. And so he started to use that, and one thing that happened due to his exposure to asbestos is he developed skin cancer. So he developed this oil, used it as a salve, put it on his skin cancer, let it sit there for 4 days under bandages, and next thing you know, anecdotally, of course, that it had cured his skin cancer. So at that point, he became a big activist in terms of cannabis use as a therapeutic medicine. Obviously, at this time, it was medicinally legal in Canada. However, he started to produce it in mass. And because he produced it in mass, was selling it on the, you know, quote unquote black market, the authorities did not like that, came after him, and essentially, you know, shut down his operation. But
he was growing it too, right?
He was, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. And as being an activist, you know, there was a big, you know, societal issue in terms of how he was providing this to people and how he was providing it to people. But at the end of the day, his aim was to essentially make this free to everybody. He opened up the same thing with the way the polio vaccine was developed. You know, it wasn't something that was patented and kept under a pharmaceutical company's, you know, portfolio.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yep. So it was something where he saw this had therapeutic benefit, could help many, many millions of people. So he decided to just offer up how to make it and create it. Of course, where he really kind of realized that cannabis has these type of therapeutic benefits is there was a 1975 study on mice that were using cannabis compounds, and it showed that it inhibited cancerous cell growth.
Like the National Cancer Society.
Right, exactly. So when he realized that, that's when he realized that there was a huge ability here for this cannabis oil to help therapeutically so many people, because it's not only it not only helps with cancer, but epilepsy, asthma. There's a plethora of different issues that this cannabis oil can help.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know what? Actually, speaking of what you just said too, I know this is one thing we always tell people and encourage people to do. I've actually recently been reading about it myself. Obviously, we're trying to prompt research, right, for consumers. So, you can hear a lot of things online and in articles and on podcasts and all that. But I encourage you to look into what he mentioned too. A lot of these studies, there's extreme validity behind them, done by very reputable people. Again, we've been unfortunately hindered in how much research we can do in the cannabis space. But I've read many of the things he referenced, and they're very interesting. So I'd encourage you to go out and kind of dig into the science of it. It really opens up, and in my opinion, it not only expands your knowledge, but expands your reach of how cannabis can help you. So
yeah. And a fun fact about him, he actually ended up fleeing to Croatia to avoid all federal charges.
I think you mentioned that earlier.
mention it
Yeah,
earlier.
that's interesting. Yeah.
Kind of an interesting fact about him. And
I feel like we need
he
I wish we had him as an add-on too.
know,
What a boss.
he ended up having a stroke in 2018 and has been using cannabis to kind of aid in that as well. So definitely something he's used lifelong.
Is he? So I had to ask. So he's around kicking, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He's alive. Yeah.
Does he still advocate for RSO? How is he involved at all? Or is he just doing his thing? I'm curious.
Well, I think because of the stroke that Victoria mentioned, he hasn't been out front as much as he used to be. But he has a website that's very popular and a book out which you can read that speaks about the history, speaks about his experience with cannabis, how he got to where he was. So he's not out front and center anymore as an activist, but he's still very much involved in
He's on the gram. He's on the Instagram.
And and it seems like he from what you guys said, he never really tried to be. He just wanted to bring he just wanted to help people.
He was just truly trying to help people.
Yeah,
make something of
cool.
it easy access to something that would
He's
help
the
a lot of
Louis
people.
Pasteur of our generation.
I commend that. That's too cool.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy, and I think he knows he put RSO right out in the spotlight and gave it a reason for people to be interested.
Yeah. So I want you to finish this one, but I'll give you my understanding, right? So we talk about what is RSO. Okay, we just told you about the history of it. You guys are the pros, so I'll kind of add in my perspective, what makes an RSO is having all the original expression of alchemy that genetic meant to provide everything, right? So sometimes if you want to get high, it's about the THC, and we talk about the terpenes and the entourage effect and all these different things, right? RSO is all of the cannabinoids, pretty much everything that it can get from that plant, all in one, right? So why don't you expand on that? Because I want them to understand what RSO is, not just outside of, it stands for Rick Simpson oil, it's full spectrum. What is RSO?
Yes, absolutely. So as Victoria mentioned earlier, crude oil. And essentially when you take cannabis and saturate it in any type of solvent, that could be hydrocarbon gases, that can be ethanol, that could be even ether, any type of solvent, of course, very dangerous to deal with at home. But you take that, you saturate it, you're extracting the full plant matter from the plant itself. So you're pulling out not only the THC and the cannabinoids, but the fats, the lipids, the carbohydrates, the chlorophylls, all those things that are really therapeutically beneficial in many ways, in many respects, as well as the terpenes, the flavonoids. So it
individually
really
and with each other.
Correct. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So when you have that crude oil, it has all of those compounds in it. And the only way to really feel the effects and get the therapeutic benefits from the oil is to do what's called decarboxylation. It's a fancy term for basically saying you heat it up. And what that does is when you heat up, because the THC and CBD and cannabinoids aren't the active ingredients present in the plant. You have to do a little bit of work to actually synthesize to get the THC.
Activate.
Yeah, it's like the acid forms of those molecules.
Exactly. So you're talking about starting with THCA and CBDA that exist in a cannabis plant. When you heat it up and you actually decarboxylate it, you're taking a carbon atom, or basically a carbon acid, away from the molecule, which then turns it into THC or CBD.
Yeah.
And that's what actually lends itself to the therapeutic benefits and the absorption into the body.
Yep. It's like activating those molecules, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you guys. We talked about this a little bit earlier too, but in your facility specifically, right? So correct me if I'm wrong, we make this initial RSO, right? We have our constituent, and then from there, that's where you're formulating it, blending it in different ways for these applications, right? For these application methods. So maybe we kind of, I actually wanted to, while we're on this topic, I want to talk about some of the medical benefits. Again, I want to dive in and kind of like who that consumer base is, how people can try. But for these consumption methods, we briefly browsed on the product. How do people take these? I know there's some obvious ones, but what are some different ways people can consume these?
So it's surprisingly a very versatile product. The one thing that we recommend is you don't smoke it.
Okay.
You don't dab it. You don't smoke it. It's got full plant matter in it. It's not great tasting. It's not an enjoyable thing. It's
not what it's meant for.
Yes,
taste,
exactly,
smell, good. Okay.
Exactly. So the best way really is to take about a half, like you said, a half gram.
And we're talking on this. We're on here right now.
Yes.
Okay.
From the
We're on the
The non-needle syringe.
The
non-needle
Okay.
syringe.
Non-needle syringe.
Yes, the dart, so
Yep.
to speak. So, the best way to take it that I've found personally is to take just about a half size of the grain of rice on your fingertip, and then you take it sublingually, put it under your tongue. You let it sit there for 30 seconds to a minute, let it kind of get into your system that way, and then follow it up with a glass of water and just waiting to see what the effects are for you. Now, it's just like any other medicine. It's not something you can take right away and expect immediate results. You can in some instances if you're taking it for pain or certain ailments. However, if you're taking it to alleviate any type of cancer issues or the radiation treatment that you receive as a cancer patient, that's something you want to start to take more continuously throughout the day, and then not only just one day, but continue that treatment on for weeks and weeks and weeks until you see or feel any results. And of course, I use the word anecdotally a lot because simply we haven't been able to truly experiment and test these things because it's been federally scheduled. So that's another aspect of this, is that a lot of people say it has a lot of different benefits, but really we're only at the precipice of learning what those benefits could be, and not just THC or cannabinoids, but the whole plant in general and what that can provide for us. So, also another way to take it, obviously I mentioned with Rick Simpson, was that he used it for skin cancer. He used it topically. So, you can put it on your skin cancer lesions. You can potentially use it for other skin, issues that you may be experiencing. And it's something to see if, it works for you. Another option, it's very popular, is you can introduce it into your food as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Yeah, same dosing, everything. You're just kind of, and you can kind of mix it in anything, really, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's kind of at that point you're masking the taste.
Right, because it is decarboxylated, like we discussed, so it is actively available to your biology.
Do you want to avoid heating it past a certain temperature to degrade the THC?
Yes, absolutely. You don't want to heat it, and it's tough for a lot of people to reach that, but 220, 220 degrees is something you want to stay. Anything higher than that, you want to stay away
that's what I tell
from.
a lot of people, because they'll buy RSO or even distillate syringes to make edibles at home, and I'm always like, if you're going to bake it, don't go above 200 degrees. Try to stay below 200 degrees, around there, a slower bake, just so you're not, a lot of people don't realize, because it degrades the THC at a certain temperature and stuff. So, I mean, it's RSO is one of the most versatile things. I wouldn't recommend, the first time I ever took it, I think I put it on a 50 milligram edible and then used that as a vehicle and ate it, but I was at the time had a really high tolerance and using it for back pain. So
Start slow.
Start low and go slow.
Build up the tolerance. And you know what? Actually, speaking of that too, somebody gave me an interesting perspective on this one time. I was talking to somebody that I shared it with that took it for cancer-related purposes. And at the end of the day, when you're talking about some RSO products, if you believe that they can help you or they can make you feel better, sometimes you might have to get a little bit high to get through that and build the tolerance. The thing I always stress to people is some people think, oh, well, if I took this first time, I got way too high, I have a low tolerance. That they do, because you've just started it, but that kind of goes away quickly. Like after you've taken it a few times, I spoke to a doctor about this later, and he warns his patients straight up. He's like, no matter what I tell you, there's a chance you could get, pretty high that first time. But that's okay. Work through it. You're not going to die. You're going to be okay. And sometimes the people that just work through it, I've had a few examples in my own life where I've pushed them through it. No, trust me, a couple times that tolerance quickly kind of builds up and allows you to take it without as much as the psychoactive effect. If you want to increase that psychoactive effect, you can, but you'll be able to deal with it.
A question I get all the time is, what sets RSO apart or RSO gummies apart from just a traditional distillate or an edible, and so because the market doesn't really know that. And for me, it's, it's all the major and minor cannabinoids that are found in it. You've got the cannabis terpenes, you've got the flavonoids that we've talked about, and it creates what I try to explain to the consumer. It's that entourage effect.
Yeah.
I prefer, that's why I prefer to smoke flower in general, is because I like the high that I get off flower, because it's a more, I call it well-rounded. I get like a well-rounded high. You get that high that you're talking, I was giggling, I was euphoric, I was creative, or those kind of things. And I also feel way better pain relief from flower itself than taking a regular distillate gummy. It's the way I explain, like there's full spectrum, but there's also, RSO that has, again, cannabis terpenes, because a lot of people will look at edibles and they're labeled indica sativa hybrid, right?
Yeah.
And I do the same thing. I kind of get a giggle out of them, no hate on anyone in the game, but they're using botanical terpenes that they're adding back into their product, and they're saying, we think this will mimic these cannabis terpenes because that's what we found, but there's just nothing like true cannabis terpenes.
Yeah.
There just really isn't for that effect, for that high. I tell people all the time, I'm like, you're probably gonna, even just off those original ones, even if you're using them recreationally because you have a high tolerance, like you're gonna probably feel the best effects that you've ever felt from these RSO gummies, because it's a way more fun high. It interacts, and two, I feel it's a similar thing. I tell people, like, smoking 12% THC flower leaves room for all those terpenes and all those other cannabinoids that I get, feel like I'm smoking a 30% flower when I'm smoking a 12%.
Absolutely.
And so it's a very similar thing. I tell people, I'm like, with RSO, you need less, and they don't get it. It's like, well, how can I eat less than I'm eating a 50 milligram edible daily, and how do I need less of this? I'm like, you're just trust me, try it. You're gonna need less. It's gonna be a way more pleasant high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, you brought up a good point too with those. So you guys reintroduced cannabis-derived terpenes into the mix for the product. The interesting thing is too, why I think that's important, and this is why, going back to what makes you unique personally, is I'll give you a quick 30-second lesson here, right? When you make RSO, when you use the solvent, a lot of the times when you recover that solvent during the production method, it's going to take all those cannabinoids and fats, lipids, waxes, everything else we talked about in the plant. It's going to preserve all those into the RSO. The one thing that's hard to preserve in that part of the process is the terpene preservation, because when we recover that solvent, it's going to pull some of those terpenes off. So what Cannalicious and Detroit Edibles are doing a little bit different here in some of these is, obviously on some of these we're talking about here, like the Cannabis Crispies, those just taste good to begin with, right? That we're talking taste there. But on some of the gummies, reintroducing that terpene blend allows you to bring back some of that was lost in the initial process and specify a certain effect or flavor or look or taste, correct?
Correct. No, absolutely. Yeah. And that's something we emphasize as a company as well. You won't see a lot of our products say indica sativa or hybrid, because truly when you're actually making cannabis oil, you are stripping away the properties that make something indica sativa or hybrid. Yep. You will see on our RSO gummies that it does say indica sativa hybrid enhanced, because we reintroduce some of those terpenes back into the product. But we certainly don't want to be in the game of fooling consumers.
Absolutely.
More power to anybody out there that's labeling their products such as and then putting, more terpenes back into their products. That's great. But we just want to be very straightforward with our customers and consumer bases and let them know that, when we are going through the process of creating these products, that it does take away those properties.
Yeah. No, I love that about you guys. I mean, it's, but that's why I was saying, again, it's what makes you unique is the fact that the way you're producing it, you're able to control all that in-house and bring kind of a unique product that you can say, these are enhanced by the way that we formulate it, how we do this, because you guys have been in the game for a while and playing around with it.
I wish you could have been in our planning meeting last October. The spirited discussion on labeling of indica, hybrid, and sativa. And we mentioned our head of processing. Devin is to the wall on, no, it can't be that because it's gone.
Yeah.
And then the sales guys, right? They're all, no, we need it because that's what the consumer says that they want.
Yeah.
And we arrived at, okay, we can point them in the direction, but we have to say that it's enhanced.
Yeah.
Not present.
Yep. Yeah. I love that.
And I think that's the big thing, because if we strip it all the way back to indica sativa hybrid outside of edibles and products, it's kind of a myth, you know. Like,
right.
I'm just gonna. I'll
right
say
now,
it.
everything's
it's
a hybrid in a
sense. It's a touchy topic,
yeah.
but it really only refers to the way the plant grows and the way the plant grows and the type 100%. Of the plant that it is. So it's just evolved over time, and it was a big marketing thing. But it's also, I mean, if you're using cannabis terpenes and it is a strain that is of a sativa, it grows like a sativa and it smokes like sativa. It's it's okay to put that on your product. But it's like same thing, you know, it's a big consumer driven way that you market your product. But I stand behind, you know, especially when it's a full spectrum like you guys, or it's an RSO, like that's not a lie. Those are cannabis terpenes, you know? So those are things that I love to tell people, you know, I'm like, they can add back botanical terpenes all day and maybe it helps you, you know, it could be placebo. I'm not sure, but I do know that, you know, people do come into the shop and their token words are indica, sativa, you know.
You know about that you know, the one funny thing about the terpene thing, there was actually a study about that too. They talked about, I forgot if we talked about this before, but terpene for terpene, right? Cannabis derived, botanical derived. From a PhD, from like a chemist point of view, you could say they're very, if not exactly molecularly the same. However, there's things that we don't still know right now. And if you actually look at the studies, the blind studies and the feedback from the consumers, that cannabis derived aspect of it really makes a big difference. So
it would make sense because you know, the cannabis plant interacts with our body so uniquely to any other plant. So, I mean, you're pulling terpenes that might molecularly be the exact same, but those, if I, you know, consumed lilac, I'm not going to get, it doesn't interact with my body the way that cannabis does and the cannabinoids do. So I think it all plays into that entourage effect of how, you know, cannabis terpenes play into cannabis flavonoids and cannabis, all the cannabinoids. So, I mean,
and you get to get them all with the RSO,
yeah,
right?
you do.
Well, and kudos to you in this show. We always talk education. How do you get to more than just one person at a time?
Yeah.
We always talk about hand-to-hand selling. This is hand-to-hand educating.
Yeah, I like that.
There's so many benefits from this, but if you come across the wrong bud tender or the wrong store, you could go down a path that you're now arguing untrue facts.
Yeah.
And you've encouraged people to go and research Rick Simpson oil, which I appreciate. Like, there's more and more that needs to be done. There's that small little university just down the road doing no cannabis research right now. Like, if one department was just unleashed to do that, what could that mean for all of us within the industry?
We're seeing that more now too, which is cool.
Knowledge is power. So I mean, the more you know about the plant, the less intimidating it is, right? And the more knowledge around it. So that's something that I do for myself, and I spend a lot of my days on days off just researching and studying and trying to figure, you know, there's just, and it's also sorting through information. What's misinformation? What's accurate information? Where are my credible sources located? And again, with the limited amount of research that is allowed to be done, it's hard to sift through that. But if you read 7 articles and they all say the same thing, it's probably safe to feel that might be the accurate information. But I encourage, like, that's something I encourage my bud tenders, even people who come into the shop. You know, I'm like, I can sit here and talk your ear off, but like, you need to read these things. You need to understand what you're putting in your body. And, you know, I've been in a couple scenarios where I've been shopping at a dispensary somewhere else, and I'm, you know, standing there and listening to the bud tender next to me, and, you know, a little old lady comes in and she's taking these indica gummies, and she goes, I took one, you know, it didn't really do much. Didn't really make me sleep. You know, the guy's like, oh, did you get high? She's like, yeah, but I didn't get tired. He goes, okay, grabs a RSO syringe off the wall and then puts it in front of her and says, try this. And I go, and that was all.
Yeah.
You know, there was no guidance. There was no, she was
education.
I'm like,
it is.
And so I, you know, before she walked out the door, cause she purchased it and I wasn't going to interrupt and be rude, but I caught her in the parking lot and I said, hey ma'am, you know, this might be, you know, a little weird, but I just kind of want to guide you on the product in your bag. I said, because that is a pretty powerful product. I said, it has the ability to help you with a lot of things, but you could overdo this. And I want to warn you on that. And, you know, my guidance to her too was try a second gummy first. You know? Like eat a second gummy in your pack that you already have. Try it.
That gummy. So you would say start with the gummies then.
I mean,
how would it,
if I'm
right
easing
now,
someone
based
into
on
RSO,
that? Yeah, how do you
absolutely.
do that? Gummies?
I would
agree.
suggest.
Okay,
that.
so if we're going to try it
it's
for the first time,
gummies.
try gummies and then move into
I think it's just because of the dosing
non-needle
on
syringe.
it is so much easier. The dosing and the flavor, right? So it's and you can build that tolerance on it, and it's fast acting, so it's something that you can feel more confident about and know your tolerance to it quicker. And then moving into a syringe form that, you know, it's not super convenient in a syringe form for a lot of people, but the people who do use it are used to it. They've got their method down. They've got it worked out for them. So, you know, the second the RSO gummies came online, it was such an easy sell, not even because, you know, there's nothing like it, but it's just such a freaking cool product that I can sell this no problem to people who are RSO users or people who come in saying the same thing. I can't sleep, and I've been eating I eat 3 or 4 edibles now and I still can't sleep. And it's like, let's like change it up. Let's try something a little bit different. And it's a good introductory to RSO.
So if you're gonna start people at that, then let me tell you guys something that's cool about watching this episode. a week following this launch, we are going to do a special so you can try the RSO gummies. We picked them out so you can do that, and we recommend that's where you start, right? So we're going to do a 2-for-1, buy 2, get 1 free. So if you come into any of the planted locations, we're going to do buy 2, get 1 free on all the RSO gummies 1 week following the episode. But with that being said, I know this is a tough one. I don't want to put you on the spot. First time users, not an edible tolerance.
Yep.
They want to come in, they want to try RSO, they want to try the Cannalicious gummies. How much do we start with? I know it's a
Half
tough
a gummy.
one. Okay.
Half
Half a gummy. Is that the vote?
I would
think
say
so.
the
We got,
same, and you have to consider your audience, right?
Yep.
Like, people that are going to listen to this are most likely already using cannabis.
yeah.
This is for those people that are in their lives. How do they help them introduce cannabis to them?
Yeah.
And the price point's the right price point, the dosage is the right, the taste is the right. And it's one way for them to say, you know what, Aunt Sally is always asking me.
Yeah.
Now I can go to Planted when I'm picking up something else. It may not even be for them. It could be for someone else in their life.
I would easily go. I mean, if you're gonna start someone on it, it's like you got your original RSO, but we already kind of said the recovery RSO is not necessarily intended to get you super high.
Correct.
So definitely, and I tell people all the time, it's easier. I would rather you feel nothing your first time eating an edible than feel way too much. And you can always build on a high, especially with these fast actings. You're not waiting an hour and a half to feel it, right? Like you can wait 30 minutes and go, all right, feeling pretty good, and I always encourage people first time eating edibles. Sounds a little bit extra, but pop the edible in your mouth, start the timer on your phone.
Yeah.
And the second you feel it, you now are gauging your onset time.
Yeah.
So that you can better dose yourself.
I still do that even though I use cannabis quite often.
Fun.
You just want to make sure you know when it's actually taking effect.
Yeah. And two, because edibles, like you said, they're discreet, and a lot of people are trying to use them like they're going somewhere, they're doing something, they're hanging out with their friends. So it's you don't want to have your high hit you while you're in the middle of driving, right? You want to get there and have it. So it's like, okay, I know it takes me 22 minutes for this edible to hit me. I'm gonna, I'm driving. It's 25 minutes away, maybe 5 minutes down from the house. I'll pop it in.
You kind of know.
Yeah. You get to like, and it's such a tailored experience per person. There's no rule of thumb of how fast is it going to hit you. Because for everyone it's different. Yours is like double what mine is, and so taking it easy, realizing that like having patience in the process and to find exactly what works for you, exactly your dose, so that you can do it right. And I encourage all my bud tenders all the time. I said, if you don't get it right for them, they're not going to use cannabis again. And like our goal is to like end that stigma. And even if you're not someone that wants to use it regularly or even uses it at all, you can see the medicinal effects from it. But if you see, your friend took one and it blew them out of the water and they hated it and they're never doing it again, chances are you're not likely to do it yourself. You're not going to do it again.
That education. Yeah. And I want to make sure too that you know how to try these products, right? So we said we're going to buy 2 get 1 free at Planted. We're going to use code RSOPC. It's going to be shown on your screen right about now. RSO for Rick Simpson Oil, PC. P as in Paul, C as in cat for podcast. I'm creative, I know. RSO PC, you're going to be able to get it online through the Planets, whether it's delivery, whether it's curbside, carry out. But most importantly, too, you're going to get to meet everybody. So we are going to do what we're calling it a takeover day. I like that. Yes. So we're going to do a Cannalicious and Detroit Edibles takeover day. All you have to do is come in and mention the show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You're going to mention the show, and you don't have to remember the code. Mention the show, but try to remember the code. RSOPC, right? Well, at least for you online that are ordering it. But we're going to have vendor takeover days. So what are we going to do at these takeover days? I know we have the 29th Friday at the Whitmore Lake location from 12 to 6, and then we have the 30th on Saturday at the Flint location from 12 to 6. You're going to have some unmedicated samples, talking about product education. What else? What are we doing?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're going to be there. We're going to have some swag items, some non-infused items or non-medicated items for people to try, just to get the idea of what the flavor of some of these products are. Just like you said, a takeover day. We hope to have all of the employees and bud tenders educated and energized to, help share what our products can do and therapeutic benefits of what, these products can achieve. And just be there to speak with people and coach people. Like Victoria mentioned, so many people come to me now that I work in the cannabis industry, either my friends or friends of my parents, and say, well, this is something I want to try. They say cannabis helps for this, that, and whatever. And so I always, have to pretty much literally coach them through it. So we'll be there to help, offer a little bit of coaching, a little bit of guidance, and also just share the great products that we have to offer.
Perfect. Is that going to be, you're going to be there, right?
Yes, I am.
Cool.
Yeah. And I mean, before we even wrap this up too, I mean, there's a ton of other products that, Detroit Edibles makes that we carry. We carry pretty much their full lineup. We'll have the flower aid.
Love the concentrates.
At that point too. Yeah. Their concentrates are awesome. They do concentrates super well. I mean, on the Detroit Edibles side, you've got Barracuda bars.
Which makes spectacular s'mores.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
That sounds
they
good.
are so good. I remember when we first opened and Andrew dropped off a box of like non-medicated Barracuda, like the minis.
Yeah, sure.
And I ate probably half of them myself. And I just kept grabbing them out of the bin, and my staff was like, are those medicated? I would be on the floor at this point. I've had like 70 of them.
Yeah.
But the chocolate it tastes so good. I mean, they've got different flavors, a milk chocolate, a dark chocolate, mint dark chocolate. And then you're also talking, they're going even a step further with chocolate bars, and they're doing 1-to-1 chocolate bars. That is, again, introducing that medicinal side of cannabis even into a chocolate bar. It's the best tasting chocolate bar I've had.
It is the best tasting chocolate
on
bar.
the market.
It
I mean,
is.
and it's my fastest selling chocolate bar.
Yeah.
It speaks in itself.
It's kind of like the OG chocolate bar.
It is. It's
almost.
been around for a
Everybody
while.
knows who it is.
Well,
Yeah,
that's why we call our brownie the OG brownie.
It is, yeah.
I've had like 4 people coming in like way back in the day, like, that OG brownie. Do you have the OG? Like people like knew the name of the OG brownie.
Yeah. No, and the Barracuda bars is just like you said, use it in your s'mores, use it like whatever you're gonna do. Like
Melt it down, pour it over ice cream.
Going back
Literally.
to what we want people to enjoy the product.
Yeah.
That was like that was what we leave people
People-
with is the experience. They
come
like
in
it.
worried that the Barracuda bars are going to disappear because they buy like 10 at a time. I have customers that buy. I mean, I have a customer who comes in and buys 15 OG brownies every time he comes in, and it's one of those.
I think that's what I was
I
talking
have
about.
to
He
keep
came in and he's
them
like, "You have them?"
stocked for him specifically. I mean, I sell them outside of that, but there's just, he said to me exactly, there's nothing else in this market that works for me. There's nothing else other than this brownie. He's like, I will come back. He'll buy 15 one day, come back the next day, buy 15 again. I mean, he'll wipe me out of 50 brownies in 3 or 4 days. And so that's something that it just speaks volumes to itself, to the product, not only to like the taste of the product, because you're not going to eat 30 of them if they taste bad, but he's getting his own effects out of it and using it for what he needs to. So we've got all those Barracuda bars. The Barracuda bars are now fast acting also. So I carry those fast acting Barracuda bars. Have you seen
need
a
to
fast
sample
acting
one of
chocolate
those,
bar
too.
in the market? No, you
Yeah.
haven't. So they're just coming out with a lot of really cool stuff. I've got the brownies. I've got almost everything from them. Not going to forget to mention the bolts.
Yeah.
Those are some fast acting edibles you guys have, a hybrid effect and stuff, but really, really good price point on those for a fast acting edible. I personally love them. I've talked to a lot of my friends. I have a friend who's like, I give them out at my kid's soccer game.
Yeah.
All the parents love them, it's like they take one, and it's really great products, really good flavors, really good company, really good people. So it's easy to support.
And you can find them too. So that's the last
Anywhere.
point. The last point I want to make before we wrap up, right? We talked about a couple of these vendor days, right? We talked about our promotion, buy 2 of the RSO gummies, get 1 free, but they've done very well. They're a well-known name in the industry, regardless of where you live, whether you're super far up north, you're, in Metro Detroit, you can find the Cannalicious and Detroit Edibles at tons of different dispensaries locally. So they're not just available at our place. You can get them pretty much everywhere. I always encourage, if any of you haven't been traditionally going into dispensaries, ordering online, I know you can go on to, the various weed maps, Leafly, things like that, and you can actually search based on your area for specific products. So if you loved the cannabis Crispies or you want to try the RSO and you're, not close by to one of the Planet stores, go online, take a look. They're well represented online everywhere. Thank you guys both so much. This was an extremely valuable episode. I had a lot of fun talking to you guys, and I hope we educated everybody as well. Do you have any final thoughts?
I do.
Please.
We're on a journey, right?
Yep.
And all of us in this industry, and it takes good partners like yourselves in the store to be able to communicate and educate. You complimented Andrew about his, going back to deliver that T-shirt, which I really do appreciate, because whether it's Andrew or Devin or Bob or both Chelsea's or Craig or TJ, any of the people that work for us, one of the things we sit down and talk about all the time is we're on this journey. We're not sure where it's going to go yet, but we're on this journey together. And if you feel like you can bring something more to the table, we always look to promote from within because it's so important to
appreciate that,
bring people along.
Yep.
But we're kind of all in this together, and having a partner like Planted doing this show to help educate. And if we did one thing today and educated one person, we've been successful.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the advocacy that you had for the RSO gummies, it was heartwarming because you almost regurgitated what we went through in terms of identifying with our marketing team. Okay, what do we want to achieve by this?
Absolutely.
And you saying that, it really was great to hear that that advocacy is out there. And
Absolutely.
the more bud tenders that can hear and learn about that, the better.
It's the truth. I mean, you make a product easy for me to sell, so those are things that they're helping people. I love to help people and you guys love to help people. So any way that we can help people, make it easier to help people, I'm sold out, So I appreciate you guys putting the effort that you do into your products and formulating the products that you do and kind of putting the, patient and consumer first and making sure that you're hitting all those points because it's, quote unquote, easy to pump out a edible, right? Like to make a gummy or something, but to put the effort and the time and the thought into it. Yeah. It's something that I know the consumers appreciate. I know I appreciate it. I know my bud tenders appreciate it. So, all around, we enjoy being partners with you guys, and we appreciate it. Yeah.
Keep blazing a trail, please.
One last plug is for Aubrey.
Yeah.
She's our head chef.
Okay.
She lived down.
Shout out to Aubrey.
She lived downriver.
Yeah.
Drove an hour and 20 minutes to Ann Arbor every day. And when I came to her and Bob and I sat down and said, we're moving to Pinconning. It's just what we have to do as a company, and we want you to come along with us.
Yeah.
She looked at us and said, I'm with you on this journey.
Yeah.
She sold
That's
her
awesome.
house down in Downriver, moved up to right outside of Pinconning. And every day I see her, she has windows. She gets to look out over huge fields of corn and beans.
Yeah.
And just the smile on her face makes it so worthwhile being a part of this with her. And I know a lot of the other people within our company feel the same. Yeah. So
we appreciate Aubrey, and passion will take you super far in this industry too. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. There's a lot of people that are in this game. There's money to be made, but there's just it's so many people to help, and the passion that you have for it's going to actually drive it all home for you. So. I appreciate Aubrey.
Yeah,
definitely.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming on. Hey, we hope everybody liked this episode. We're gonna start doing more cool ones like this. We're gonna come out episode 5, 6. We're gonna start digging into some topics. We're gonna bring specialists in. If you have anything that you want to hear about, shoot us a shout out, comment, YouTube. We're gonna be on a ton of different platforms. We're gonna throw some teasers out. Remember, RSO PC. Mention the podcast. Buy 2 RSO gummies, get 1 free. Thank you very much. Cheers, everybody.